Hi everyone! We are finishing up with King Arthur and the Medieval Ages unit. So we're going to do a end of book writing activity, and I want to give you some guidance through video to assist you with this. So I recommend checking out this video and these Google Slides every day as you go through the assignment. Let's take a look at the suggested schedule first. So for Monday, we want you to review the directions and assignment options, and obviously reach out to us if you do not understand the directions, and we'll try our best to help you get started. On Tuesday, make sure that you've already decided on an option and begin brainstorming ideas. Again, view possible topics to consider. Wednesday, you either want to draft the poem, the letter, the song, or journal entry option on the Google Doc on this week's assignments, and I'll show you that in a moment. And Thursday, revise and edit it. Do not forget to turn it in when you are finished. But as we always say, if you want us to check your work before you submit it, just ask us. And remember, Fridays are catch-up days, so if you still have stuff to do, then go ahead and use that time on Friday to get it done. All right, here are your directions. Using what you know about the Middle Ages from reading King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table, complete one of the 4 writing activity options. Review the options and directions on these slides, and then complete one of the options on the Google Doc titled King Arthur Writing Activity attached on this week's assignments on Google Classroom. Again, I repeat, you only have to pick one, and you only have to do one. So, what are your options? For option 1, you can write a poem that tells about life in the Middle Ages from the point of view of a peasant. Remember, peasants are like the lowest class of the Middle Ages. So if you were a peasant, you want to make sure you consider what their life was like. So your poem should be 12 lines in length. It doesn't have to rhyme, but it can if you want to try. And you need to use at least one metaphor or simile. If you're not sure what that is, it's comparing two things that are not the same. So, when we use a simile, we might say, my love is as red as a rose, or, I run as fast as the flash. A metaphor is not using like or as. Some possible topics to consider to include in your poem. You could include things about working long hours, all of the farming that you have to do, paying taxes to a lord or king, which many people did not like to have to do back then. Maybe what it was like to be a servant to a lord or to a king or queen, even. What life was like if you had to live in cramped huts with, not much space. Or you can talk about making tools. Now again, a poem, guys. Remember, we've done some poems. We did Wander in Angus. We did the one, I can't remember what it was called, but it was one where the guy was on the sled and his friend died, and all about how he had to help make sure that he kept his promise to his friend. So if you need to get some inspiration, you can look back in studies think for those poems to help you if you'd like. All right, option 2. Write a letter to a knight from the Middle Ages, telling why you either admire or object to or don't like him or her. Now, obviously, guys, a knight would most likely be a him, just so you know. And your letter should be at least 200 words. Guys, if we're saying 200 words, maybe 2 paragraphs, something like that. And when it comes to some possible topics to consider, you can talk about what you like about a knight's duties or how well they serve the king. You could talk about qualities of either a good knight or qualities of a bad knight. So if you want to take some inspiration from King Arthur, maybe you're writing a letter to Sir Tristram or Sir Lancelot or Gawain. You can write a letter to them and tell why you like them so much. And you can explain maybe how they help to protect their queen or protect their king. All right, for option 3, this is probably the more difficult one. Write a Gregorian chant or madrigal. They are both types of music from the Middle Ages, about a topic that would have been important to someone in the Middle Ages. Your song should be 15 lines in length, and you must use at least one metaphor or simile. If you're not sure what we're talking about, a lot of times these chants or madrigals, they were sung on like a little lyre, like little looking, it almost looked like a small little guitar, or maybe on a harp, and they would sing these songs to their, a lot of times to people in big settings with the kings and queens and lords and ladies. Um, and you can definitely write some things either about chivalry, especially with knights, and how chivalrous they were. I think of Sir Tristram. He was a very chivalrous knight. You could write about feudalism, so what life was like when you were a peasant versus a serf or a noble. You can write one just about castles, maybe what life was like within a castle, or how they looked, or the function of them. You can write about knights, maybe the life of a knight and what they had to do. Or you could write about Vikings, so what it was like to be a Viking going out to explore on boats and making those boats. Or you can write one about the Crusades, the war with the Crusades. Like I said, this is probably the most challenging one, but if you really want to be creative, you can actually even look up some examples, whether it's through YouTube or whatever, but they may have examples of these that you can listen to inspire you. And option 4, pretend that you were a knight in medieval Europe. Create a journal entry describing a typical day in your life. Now, when we talk about a journal entry, it's kind of like a diary entry. You want to at least include 200 words. So you might want to start with Dear Diary, or Today was such a tough day. I was a knight and I couldn't believe all of the terrible things I saw in war. I don't know. You make up your own stuff. But again, you want to talk as if you are the knight. You are in the perspective of the knight. So you're um, in their own writing. Some possible topics to consider. You can talk about chivalry and how they are so good to young maidens, and respect and manners. You could talk about what life was like within the castles that they lived in and worked in. Or you can talk about what it was like defending the king and the queen. You can especially talk about the Crusades and maybe what it was like to defend the king and queen during the Crusades, and how they helped to protect the castle. Or you could talk about them fighting in battles, how they had to prepare with their weapons, talk about the process it took to become a knight. Whatever you choose for your options, though, you definitely want to go back into Google Classroom. I highly recommend that you go back a couple weeks. So whether you're using some information from King Arthur, or if you want to go back before we started with King Arthur. So if you want to go back as far as, as far as March, early March, you could go back. Sorry, this is ELA. You could go back and check out the different types of civilizations. Let's see. Trying to see where we started. Maybe it wasn't actually. I'm sorry, guys. I think it was actually in March 30th that you could go back and you can look at all of the different slides we had. Remember, we talked about Charlemagne and the Franks. We talked about the knights and medieval Europe geography. So you can check back on these for information. As well as, I think, April 6th through 9th, we talked about feudalism and the Magna Carta. Those are some really good examples to use to help you with these. So, the last thing we said, though, is once you're ready and you've picked your choice, the other thing you'll need to open up then is this right here. So here's your Google Doc. And again, we listed the 4 choices that you have, but you want to make sure that at the end of this, you then have your actual choice that you do, and you type it all here. This is where you are going to actually do the work. All right, everyone. I hope you are ready for this week. If you do have any questions, if you want us to check anything, obviously you can message us on GoGuardian. You can email us. Um, Sometimes we check the comments on Google Classroom, but not as often, but you can use any of these. But I highly recommend you keep coming back to this video and these Google Slides as well to help you. Have a great week and good luck.